My name is Stuart Saulters. I'm a policy advisor at API. Didn't mess up anything. So in that role, I support the midstream group, which was actually just formed this year. And so it includes pipelines, rail, as well as marine infrastructure. So my role as policy advisor is mostly focused on the pipeline segment within the midstream group. Today, I'd like to speak to you a little bit on the soon-to-be issued Recommended Practice 1175. This will provide guidance on leak detection programs from the industry. But before we get discussing the RP, I'm going to take a few minutes and share a little bit about API's ballot process and the status of this RP. And then I'll put together kind of agenda slide to walk through some of this. But like I said, I want to talk a little bit about the API process, the current status, as well as the intentions of API RP 1175. It's a pretty lengthy document, so I'm going to show you the table of contents as they're proposed and then walk through just a few sections, recognizing that there's just a limited amount of time with you guys this morning. So I want to hit some of the highlights of where we feel like are the key sections of this document. I will admit that this document is what I would think is moving the needle, quote unquote, in terms of this leak detection program guidance. And so hopefully you guys will have some good questions as we go through this, and we can take those at the end. So talking a little bit about API process, this is a very busy slide, as you can see. A lot of stuff goes on as we develop our standards within API. I won't walk through all of this, but I'll be glad to answer questions, comments at the end of the session, and then I'll be around to answer questions. A couple things I did want to note. So if you look, there are a lot of acronyms, which our industry is very good at. But one acronym is CG, which is Consensus Group, and that is a group of industry stakeholders. It's a group of stakeholders. Some are from the industry, some are from the public, and some are from government. So PHMSA is a part of this consensus group. This consensus group is the group responsible for voting and approving each of API's documents. So we'll talk a little bit about the documents here in a second. But for instance, a recommended practice has to go before this consensus group to be approved. In addition to the consensus group element of the process, this whole process in terms of creating, initiating the RP, which kind of starts out at the beginning there with what they call an SRRR. This is all an accredited process by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. So you may know ANSI is doing different things in terms of testing and stuff like that, but they also support our standards development process in making sure we're following procedures that promote openness and completeness. Like I mentioned, there are 5 document types that we publish at API. Those are listed here on the slide. I'll read through them just so you guys are familiar. Bulletin technical report. That's the document that conveys technical information on a specific subject or topic, and it's generally issued one time. The code is a document intended for adoption by regulatory agencies or authorities having jurisdiction. In this case, it would be PHMSA. Recommended practice is a document that communicates proven industry practices. And this is interesting here. We actually had a conversation earlier about proven industry practices. So if some of the actual RPs that are developed are not necessarily consensus or kind of proven on an industry-wide base. For instance, safety management systems was recently issued, and we thought that was kind of a new thing for our industry, and it is new on a whole. But there are a lot of particular companies that have great management systems and have a lot of good learnings, and so we're able to roll those into one industry-wide document. So that's kind of what we're meaning there with proven industry practices. Specification is a document that prescribes technical requirements to be fulfilled by product, process, or service. That's typically more for your service companies, so you'll have valves and fittings, specifications, things like that. And then standard. It's a document that provides for common and repeated use, rules, guidelines, or characteristics for activities or their results aimed at the achievement of the optimum degree of order in a given context. Standards typically include elements of both specifications and recommended practices. So now moving on to this document. So RP 1175. Currently, it has been balloted. So it has gone to this consensus group, and this consensus group has provided comments. Now, I want to note at this point that I feel like API tries to do a very good job at encouraging everyone, all people, to submit comments. Only there is a certain amount of people that are on that consensus group, but everybody can submit comments. So if you have access to API's ballot website, which if you don't, let me know and I can help you out there. But you can submit comments to that, and the task group that's developing RP has to resolve your comment. So they don't have to necessarily agree with you, but they have to respond to your comment to say why they don't or they do agree. So that's an opportunity for the public to be involved in this process. With the RP 1175, right now, it has been balloted, the comments have been received. There were actually a lot of comments, and so the team is working through resolving all those right now. They're providing resolutions to the commenters, making sure everybody understands why they did what they did. There is a chance that there will be a second ballot. So basically, the comments require substantive changes. So they need to go out again and say, hey, because of the comments we received, we need to do this or that. So that if that second ballot does occur, it may not make the first quarter 2016 publication date, but that's still the target right now. So, all right. So now let's get into the meat of the RP. So the intent of API RP 1175 was to provide a holistic, high-level overview of liquids leak detection program management. Now, I highlight liquids here because that is in the scope. However, we have reached out to some of our friends in the gas transmission industry to kind of help, to see, hey, is there an opportunity for us to really partner with you guys to kind of help you out? Because this document can be easily transferable to the gas transmission side. Obviously, there are technical differences between liquids leak detection and gas leak detection, but this is a programmatic document, and which we'll talk about here in a second. So there are some value in maybe partnering with them to help them do something similar. Moving on down, like I said, it is programmatic, so it provides guidance on development, implementation, and management of a leak detection program. It talks a lot about performance measures. So as I mentioned earlier, safety management systems, that's kind of the new thing here within the pipeline industry. A lot of that is focused on the Plan, Do, Check, Act. But part of the Plan, Do, Check, Act process is you have to have something to measure against. And so this RP does a lot in creating and helping companies establish performance measures. And then there at the last bullet, address identified gaps and develop a comprehensive leak detection program document. So there again, a part of SMS is documentation, record keeping, finding value and making sure that you're documenting and really establishing in writing why you do what you do. A couple other things to hit on, risk-based approach. We'll talk a little bit about how they select leak detection systems here in a second, but the risk-based approach is the basis for why you choose the systems you do to build out your program. Suggest all forms of leak detection are managed in a coordinated manner. Again, making sure that each system is based on risk, but it also builds into your larger leak detection program. Promote advancement of robust leak detection programs. We don't want to be at the floor. We want to push the limits with our leak detection programs, and then represent industry best practices. So you've heard me talk about leak detection programs, leak detection systems. Just real quick, leak detection program is the overarching program that an operator has. It's encompassed by all the leak detection systems. So when you talk about leak detection systems, for example, that would be like your aerial overflights, your ground patrols, your CPM, your SCADA. Those are what we would define as systems, and they all build into a larger program. So these are all the sections in RP 1175. Like I mentioned, there's a lot. It's a very, very technical document, very thick document. It'll help you go to sleep if you can't go to sleep. But no, sorry. The team may get mad at me for that comment. But anyway, a lot of good effort went into it, and I believe it does, like I said, move the needle in terms of leak detection programs. One of the things I really wanted to highlight was leak detection culture and strategy. The team put a lot of effort into this section to really kind of promote the good things about the right leak detection culture, leak detection strategy, which is important to having a good leak detection program. You look at some of the technical things with CPM and SCADA, that's very important, but it's kind of the culture, the strategy that goes behind that that really helps support that. So they define culture in the RP as it influences how personnel behave and act. It's shared. It's a teamwork thing. It affects and is affected by the behavior and interactions of the people. It includes an organization's belief, and it's evolving. One of the things that they really try to put strongly in the RP is management, direction, and support. There needs to be ongoing management, direction, and support. And then another key element that they include is doing every task the right way every time. All those elements they feel really add up into the appropriate leak detection culture. Another element that they kind of push a lot is this thinking to knowing. So they're trying to challenge their colleagues within the operation industry or within the pipeline operation industry to not just necessarily know or to think there's a leak, but to know there's a leak. And so you'll see some indicators there that they've listed in the RP that contribute to a strong leak detection culture. The other element of this section is strategy. There again, you need to have the right culture, but then you need to have the right strategy to support that culture. So the strategy, as it's defined in the RP, it outlines the technical aspects, it sets the goal, and it details how those goals will be met. Here are the elements that they list in the strategy. There again, number one, management, commitment, and leadership. So very important that management is a part of this leak detection strategy, that they're supporting the efforts of whether it's the controllers or the technical folks that deal with leak detection. They want that to be a part of a good leak detection program. And then I won't read through some of the other ones, but you kind of see them there. I mentioned earlier the selection of leak detection methods. So leak detection systems combine into this bigger leak detection program. And so selecting those leak detection systems or leak detection methods is very important. You have to choose the appropriate principles, methods, and techniques to achieve your program goals. And then also, too, your leak detection method needs to allow for the selection of new applications or additional applications. We'll talk a little bit more about how this document works in that plan, do, check, act cycle. But this element here just kind of shows that you can't just build your leak detection program on day one and then expect it to last for infinity. You need to look at new applications, additional applications, look at what you've already put in there. Your selection, as you start building out your leak detection program, your selection needs to be multifaceted, needs to be iterative, kind of builds back into that selection of new applications, existing applications, and re-examining what you may already have. And then, like I mentioned earlier, as a part of the selection of leak detection methods, documentation is essential. Some more elements that kind of go into the process of selection. You need to make sure your culture and strategy are aligned with your selection. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the performance targets and metrics, that's a part of your selection as well. As you select what leak detection systems are in your program, you need to make sure they're measurable. You can kind of build out targets, build out metrics that kind of show that, hey, this is the right leak detection system for my program, and this is how I can prove it is, things like that. A couple other elements there for process. Kind of go into a little bit more about performance metrics, KPIs, and targets. So there actually is a whole section on this, and this just kind of gives you a flow of how metrics kind of prove to the KPIs, which again prove to the performance targets. So you set your metrics, and then you're able to measure those by your KPIs, and then all of that, of course, is focused on what is your target, what's your end goal. 4 leak detection metrics that are proposed in the RP are reliability, sensitivity, accuracy, and robustness. And then there again, your KPIs, your key performance indicators, help add the specificity around those metrics. So you can have specific KPIs that kind of build into the metrics that are listed above. Another section that I want to talk about that I feel like is very important for the industry and very important for the folks involved in Pipeline Safety Trust is control center procedures for recognition and response. Recognizing that leak detection systems are very important in mitigating a leak. In the control center, the operators in the control center are at the front line in helping that mitigation process. So the first thing, of course, like I've said before, is documentation. You need to have a documented leak response procedure. It needs to be complementary, and it needs to provide the operator and the controller with the right amount of guidance. Like I mentioned, pipeline controllers are the front lines. They need to be given the level of authority and responsibility that they're deserved. They need to know that if they make a decision, that it's the right decision and that there's not going to be negative repercussions, that they've done their best due diligence, and then and they've done what they thought was right. Now, along those same lines, if you have good procedures, then they should be trained, they should be properly knowledgeable about what they need to do in any situation. So that's kind of what this section gets at, is focus on procedures, focus on documentation, so that the controllers are set up to do the right thing. And then lastly, think teamwork, recognizing that operating a pipeline involves a lot of people, a lot of manpower, and so teamwork is very essential for this. A little more about leak detection, just quickly. Reinforce all potential leak alarms, have a cause, so you need to do something. That action after the leak alarm needs to be evaluated. You need to do something based on the leak alarm, and then so once you do something, you evaluate it. Every leak alarm requires immediate attention. We talked a little bit about leak response procedures earlier, just a couple more bullets. The last one I really want to highlight here is shutdown is always an option. I think there's some folks, some controllers that maybe have the feeling that a shutdown may require negative repercussion. The group that developed this task group really put in there, really focused some emphasis on, shutdown is always an option. If you feel like that is the option and you've done your proper evaluation, you've done everything you need to do, that could be the choice that you decide. So I've kind of talked a lot about reporting and documentation, but just want to highlight it one more time here, saying that there is a section that is involved. And in this particular situation, there actually is a focus on reporting and documentation of what you may have done in a leak response situation. So you want to make sure you log your actions during a leak response situation. The group actually recommends that you use a standard form so that controllers are familiar with the process, they know what they need to do, and then also, too, that reporting and documentation is very important in an incident investigation. So if there was a leak response, and they want to investigate it, the company wants to investigate it further, you have documentation to know why they did what they did. So lastly, in this very long section, they talk about pipeline restart. So recognizing that pipeline restart is not necessarily leak detection, it is a very important part of a control center procedure. And so the group felt like it was necessary to have the pipeline restart question, the pipeline restart issue in that control center procedure. So within the procedure, they recommend that you make sure the appropriate authorization process is included, when to restart, make sure those elements are included in that control center procedure, as well as make sure that you note that there's a high level of awareness. When you restart a pipeline after a leak response, you need to make sure that there is potential for something to happen, so both field personnel and control center staff should be well aware and kind of on high alert. And then, as we get kind of towards the end here, just want to talk a little bit more about overall performance evaluation. I kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of the Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is the key element in safety management system. The folks that developed this leak detection program, RP, want to build that into their system as well. So you need to make sure that as you build out your program, you build in your metrics, you're able to capture noteworthy results of the performance. You're able to benchmark those, whether it's against industry or against your within your business units, within your individual companies, but you need to have some type of scope to know, hey, am I doing a good job? Hey, do I need to improve? Management needs to be involved in your performance evaluation. In the RP, they actually say that management should review performance evaluation. So there needs to be some strong support from management, strong oversight from management in the performance evaluation of your leak detection program. And then, like I talked about earlier, key performance indicators, very important in ensuring that you have the appropriate performance from your leak detection program. Improvement planning and process. This is the final chapter in the RP. Again, kind of goes to that Plan, Do, Check, Act process in terms of making sure that you identify and define what improvements you need to make, you capture any issues, you look for improvement. We'll hear Ken talk a little bit more about what PHMSA is doing with their research projects. There's a lot of leak detection research going on there. If something new comes out, is that being included in your evaluation? Are you improving based on that new research? And then review history. What are you doing? How has your leak detection program performed? can you take that past performance to improve it? Initiating and monitoring, again, we're not just saying, oh, this would be good to do this. We'll do it in 2017 when we have the money. No, you want to plan, budget, schedule, and track all these improvements. You want to review opportunities, set targets, and then as well, consider time frame, use checklists, and update and improve. So, with that being said, that is all I had for you guys.